Ralph, you are obviously very loyal to the brand,
Hmm.
as you've been there your whole career. I mean,
Yeah.
would that situation be the same if you were starting out today?
I don't think so. I'm definitely weird. When I interview young designers, prospect designers, they laugh at me. They literally, when they find out I've been here 30 years, they literally laugh because that's just so unusual. But I tell them, look, I've worked for 8 CEOs in a row, and directly, I think for the last 6 CEOs, I've worked directly. And every single one of them comes with a new rule book, a new playbook, a new, look, the company's actually even changed, from Mercedes ownership or partnership to private equity to fiat and now with PSA. I mean, we've had 4 different complexions in that time. So I feel like I've worked in a way for 4 different companies. And when I was doing design back before '08, like you said, I love the brands. I've always loved Alfa Romeo. Since I was a kid, I've always admired that car. And here I am running that brand. I'm like, how did that happen? Designing for my dream brand. So things came to me. I didn't have to go to get them. They just came to me.
With your overseeing of those Italian brands, for example, how much did you have to wrestle with yourself not to spoil the soup too much?
That's exactly, I love how you describe that because that's what I would keep saying to myself. The Italians are amazing artists to start with. They're very, very good at what they do. There was a lot of chaos. I found a lot of disorganization. So I would just try to get them to work better with engineering, get them to plan better, and budget better, because they could overrun their budgets at the beginning of the year and run out of money by the time to get to the end of the year. So it was really more that, bumper bowling them. I would joke about it, and then we became good friends. So initially there was a lot of trepidation when I came on, because what does an American boy know about, the Italian culture? So I was honestly very respectful and quiet. I didn't change much. I just let them, I earned their trust, let's say. And to this day, I've never really interfered. I just enabled them versus trying to steer them, if you know what I mean.
Ralph, on the subject of leadership, you're sorry to pull on your heartstrings, but you also said that you didn't think that your dad necessarily saw you as a leader. Did you see yourself as a leader?
No, I remember you remember I was that kid in the back of the class, and my first 6, 7 years of my career were uneventful. I was just doing my stuff and very focused on my work. And I remember I got tapped to run an intern program in 2000, in 1999-ish, before all my promotions started. And they were testing. I didn't know at the time, but they were testing to see if I could manage a group of people. So I had 10 interns, and we had an offsite facility, and they loved it. They loved the program. And that's when all of a sudden I started getting promoted. So in 2001, I became the youngest director, uh, I think, in the company's history. I was basically 31 years old. The directors are typically in their late 40s. So I didn't know what was going on. I was like, what? I went from being a board designer, not board, I mean a drawing on the board, to given this huge responsibility of running an entire studio. And I was honestly, it was another one of those throw up in the toilet moments where I was like, what are they doing? But I give the company a lot of credit for seeing potential in a young kid who's kind of a brat, I was just a design brat, a car guy. In the weekends, I would tinker and not think about the big picture. But right around that time, I was getting thinking about getting my business degree. So everything was starting to happen in 2000, early 2000s.
That's a absolutely monumental change to go from, as you're saying, being a board designer to overseeing a whole department. And you obviously had your anxiety about it, and you said that you gave the company credit. Are
Yeah.
there any programs in place to kind of help you navigate the complex waters of what you had to
At,
go
at
through?
at the time there wasn't, and one of the challenges of having that role was most of the people that worked for me, half of the people that worked for me were older than me by 10 years. 10 years my senior, and I'm directing them. So initially it wasn't easy. There was a lot of, let's say, resistance, and I had not thought to get mentorship. Today, though, we've established, because of my experience, I'm mentoring it right now about 15 different people. So we not force, but we highly encourage our leadership to mentor people 2, 3 layers down into the company for that reason, because I hated having nobody to talk to about everything. So to be honest, I kind of bumped around on my own, trying to figure it out the hard way. Made a few mistakes and had some unnecessary tense moments that I learned from those, and I helped the others. Now I'm mentoring many, many young people, and it was good though because I kind of learned it the hard way.
What sort of people are you mentoring now?
everything. So I'm also I'm head of what we call STAN, the Stellantis African American um, diaspora. So it's basically a group of African Americans in the company. Through that, I mentor about 6 people, and then otherwise, HR loves to direct people to me. So the HR team say, "Hey, we have a new hire in coding or tech that they would love to meet you." Some people know of me because of the Netflix thing, and they seek me out. I've had a handful like that. This, hey, I've heard about you. Can you be my mentor? And I'm fascinated by how aggressive, not aggressive, how forward the young generation is. They'll literally email me, say, hey, can you be my mentor? Just like that. I never, at their age, would have dared to write an email to an executive. But I find it, to be honest, Sam, they I always leave those moments better than I found them, if you know what I mean, right? I think I'm going to help them, but they actually help me because they give me a perspective I could never have if I wasn't talking to a two-year new hire or a brand new conquest from another company. So it's so enriching. It's hard to explain. Yeah.
Is that the truth? I mean, because I've heard that a few times, and I like the prospect of me doing that to somebody else is honestly simply overwhelming. And you
You just
always
got to
feel
do it.
like imposter syndrome, and like out of your unqualified to do it.
Yeah. I think the recommendation is always to not overdo it. Just say, hey, can you talk to me 4 times a year? And most execs will find 4 times to sit down a year, even if it's for half an hour. And what ends up happening is you become pals, and all of a sudden that goes to once a month or whenever you need me, give me a call. And that's exactly what happens. Some of those that we were routinely once a month have kind of become once a quarter because they feel, okay, I get it now. I get what you're teaching me. So they come and go in intensity, and if there's a moment, an intense moment, an emergency call or a text, hey, call me. I'm like, let me talk you off the ledge, let's say.
What does it take for somebody out of the Chrysler Stellantis organization to be mentored by Ralph? Is that possible?
Yeah, phone call. A
Okay.
phone, usually a nice email that describes who they are and always an exploratory conversation. I've never said no to that. Every single one I've actually accommodated. I can't always mentor every one of them, but I will at least open the door and have that initial conversation.
Ralph, I don't want to repeat the question that I've already asked, but I mean it is a lot to do with the like navigating that career path. I mean,
Hmm.
you did so seemingly pretty blindly, and yet
Yeah.
you achieved a hell of a lot in a very short period of time. If you had nobody to mentor you through those processes, what tools did you use to get to where you got to?
So looking at it now in hindsight, I would say it's something I've learned and I've passed this on to a lot of people. I said, number one, people have to want to be around you as a human, especially in a corporation where you're surrounded by at any given time a lot of people. So, and if you think about myself, I went to an all-white high school. As a young black person, there's only a handful of black people in this 1,000-person high school. So you have to learn very quickly to be likable, to be approachable, not to be intimidating, and all of those things. But the same thing is true in a corporation. If you can't be a good team player, if you're an abrasive person or you think you have the answers to everything, people don't want to work for you and they don't want to be around you. And other leaders notice that. Other leaders will observe. The number one thing we look in leaders is the ability to work with others, to kind of mesh and create teams, because nothing is done without a team. So if you any coach, you see them on TV, right? The abrasive soccer coaches. Then you have the ones that are rubbing the shoulders and keeping the team engaged. And those are the ones we like to see. I don't know about other companies, but we like the shoulder rubbing coach. And that's what I've always tried to be is somebody who, first of all, has empathy, who understands whatever the struggle, because everyone has a unique, and that's the other thing about life is everybody has a struggle, a hidden struggle that you can't see necessarily unless you ask or dive. And maybe they don't want to tell you, and that's okay. But you have to respect that you can't shout to someone because you don't know what their situation is. So first, discover them as a person, understand them deeply, and then modify your behavior for everybody that works for you. I don't speak the same way to everybody. Some can handle a little more forceful style. Some need a softer style. Some need some storytelling. Some just want very succinct bullet point rules. So I find that I'm not one leader for the whole. I can't do that. So I try my best to adapt very in the moment, adapt in the moment, literally in the moment. And I recall that because over your time as a leader, you see patterns in people. You recognize types of people that need a certain type of direction, especially artists. Artists are so special and sensitive that you just cannot command and control them. It doesn't work. So you have to coddle them sometimes, or you have to give them space when they're not feeling creative. So it's a lot, but it's manageable. And I have transferred some of those tricks. When I see a younger leader acting, even an engineer who's in a meeting acting very abrasive, I'll give it a few days and I'll pull them aside and say, hey, by the way, and that was done to me. I'll never forget. I did a presentation to a bunch of leaders, and I used the word "I" probably 30 times. And my boss at the time pulled me aside and says, "Ralph, do you realize you said "I" 30 times?" And I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I did." I was, you should learn how to say "we." And ever since then, I've been super like careful to include the team in everything that I do. So it's very those moments are special moments. Yeah.
But Ralph, I think that's what's absolutely unique about you. And I said this when I was reaching out to your team was that I would there I said it. I couldn't you are for the most part a total anomaly, because somebody that would have achieved what you've achieved so consistently at such a short period of time you would normally associate that with the real alpha male, like it's my way or the highway kind of attitude. And I think, like, for the most part, I mean, I can't paint all the big American car companies in the same brush because they're different. But I mean, there's surely a hell of a lot of that is present in those corporations. So somebody must have been a point of reference for you in terms of how you deal with people.
Tom Gale, he's my mentor. Outstanding soft leader with a soft style. He knew his stuff, so you respected him. But I also observed what not to do. I've seen some very abrasive leadership styles, and you learn from that as well. You see that, and you react to it. It's like, wow, I really don't like how that feels, so I'm not going to do that to someone else. And again, as you mentor people, they tell you stories of their lead. They eventually they drop their guard, and all of a sudden they're describing horrible moments, and you're like, oh my God. And some of these apply to your home life, not just work. So I'm like, I constantly editing myself. And my dad used to say to me, he goes, everybody, I hope I don't insult your listeners, but he used to say, everybody shits sitting down. So it took me a while to understand what he meant by that, but it's like at the end of the day, we're all humans and people, and we're all pretty basic down and deep inside. So don't think you're so, you're all that.
Ralph, I know you again, you were very candid about your parents and that they were Haitian immigrants. What
Yeah.
what was it that your dad did?
He was initially an accountant for a large Sun Life, this big company in Canada. And then he actually quit, went back to school, and became a teacher. He used to teach English to the French-speaking kids. He was actually on an Indian reservation and taught there for a while. It was like an hour and a half drive from our home in Canada. He loved kids. He loved to teach. The only thing he would complain when he got home that the kids were very unruly.
And did you guys speak Creole at home?
Only when they were arguing, they would. When my mother got heated, that's when the Creole came out. So
But you
yeah,
don't
I can
speak
understand it to this day.
you don't speak it, no.
No, I only know. Unfortunately, I only know the bad words. I can cuss you out in Creole, but I can't. No, I can order like food at a Haitian restaurant or something like that. But
I got
don't speak.
I got really excited when I read that because I was like, I looked at your age and like you're born in New York City, and I was like, I wonder if he's friends with Wyclef Jean. Have you ever met him?
And unfortunately, no. I think he knows of me, and of course, I know of him. And he's doing amazing things for Haiti. He's always been an advocate of Haiti. I hope to meet. He's one of the people I hope to meet someday. It was kind of cool that he was at the Olympics. I think he lit the torch.
That's awesome, and he's
Really cool.
always that, as you said, he's always flying the flag so high for Haiti. I mean,
Yeah,
like in the earliest records, it's really really inspirational, dude.
yeah, yeah. Him and Mitch Albom are my two heroes. They've done so much for Haiti.
Have you been over much?
Yeah, it's been a while, to be honest. We went as a family about 5 years ago to go basically investigate. I had not been since I was a kid. I've been only maybe 4 times in my whole life. And I took my entire family, my mother and my brother's family. We all went together and spent 10 days there and really explored. We went to the nicest parts of Haiti, and we also saw the shanty towns, and it was really eye-opening.
Is it like how safe is it there?
It comes and goes. Right now, it isn't. There's a lot of kidnappings, as you know. We actually had local police escort us. We hired them
Wow.
just to be safe. They were, you wouldn't know they were there. They were undercover. But my family that lives there was recommending that, so we took their advice. But we actually honestly never ran into any issues at all.
Ralph, but on the subject of autonomy, you said in the series that you were very conflicted about the future. As like on the one hand, you are super enthusiastic and excited to see what comes, but as a driving enthusiast, you were you were hoping that we could hang on to that choice. How do you feel about the situation now?
I think it's definitely right now everything is overlapping. So there's everything. There's freedom, there's budding autonomy. It's really taking a lot more time to have truly autonomous cars. I think we're further away than we thought. We're going to have very safe cars. Some of the systems that enable autonomy are now being brought forward for safety's sake, for driving assistance and whatnot. But true autonomy, like the sci-fi stuff that you see, that's years away yet. We can do it in controlled cities. Like if you designed a civic space to only have autonomous cars, then they could speak to each other. But to blend autonomous cars with traditional cars is a mess, and very difficult to do. Um, but everybody's working on it. So and mostly around safety. It's really about safety, and I think most humans can drive just fine if they've got the education. But what I'm finding is interesting. So I'm a racer. I love to race cars. I'm finding that there's tracks are being built all over the United. We have 200 racetracks, private club tracks, and in Europe that's been the case for years. So the car as a pleasure device is still alive and well, and actually there's dedicated cars that just are made for track only. So we're starting to see that side. So as an enthusiast, there's a place to go. Let's say get your rocks off, and then as a consumer, cars are going to get much safer and more efficient and more intelligent. So yeah, I think I've accepted that the future is upon us, and we're working right now 7 years into the future. And honestly, I have to have an out of body experience because in 1 minute I'm working on a 1969 Alfa Romeo, the next minute I'm thinking about 2030. so, so it makes my head explode, but it's
What
fun.
sort of timescale do you think we are looking at to get like full kind of not Jetsons, but as you put it, sci-fi stuff?
I think by 2030 it'll be like that. Whether it'll be a choice is going to be the thing because, like I said, for it to really work, it has to be kind of an agreement between. At one point, cars are going to have to speak to each other to be the safest possible, to avoid each other, and the systems on those cars are $7,000 to $10,000. So on top of the car, right? So a lot of people can't afford that. So it shouldn't be only the wealthy that have autonomous cars. So it has to be democratized. It has to be the systems have to be mature enough to be assimilated by everyone. That's when it'll really work. But we already today we have autonomous cars on the freeway. We have level 2 plus on our cars, on our newest cars that can drive themselves on the freeway and change lanes. We don't want you to go to sleep, of course, because we just want to, just in case something crazy happens. That is close. That'll be in the next couple of years when just about any premium luxury car has highway assist, very good highway assist. But that inner city, the in Rome, you can imagine the the roundabouts in Rome, right? So that situation is almost impossible for an autonomous car because you'd have to basically be able to make a sentient human. The day we can have robots that are exactly as smart as a human is the day we can have cars that are autonomous, yeah, fully
Do
autonomous.
you do you ever think there'll be a situation where you can get in like there'll be where you can literally like drink in the car so that you've got like your own private taxi basically? Because I know that this is a real sticking point, like,
Yeah, yeah.
and I just wondered like how cool would it be to like get in your car, go for a drive, and say actually I want to have a bottle of wine and just travel home.
I think my lawyers would not let me answer that question. So I'm going to take a pass on that one, let's say.
Okay. Listen. So let's talk about electrification.
Yeah.
That's a prominent. It seems like it's a prominent trend at the moment. Although there is this quiet. I don't know if you want to call it a sleeping giant, but this other alternative that is hydrogen. Is
Yeah.
this something that you guys are looking at all?
Yeah, we're finding hydrogen is a really good answer for the very large vehicles, for over-the-road trucks, for heavy-duty trucks, delivery trucks. First of all, they have a lot of space because the hydrogen, to get enough hydrogen on board to be meaningful, you need space. So you can package that easily in a delivery van. So I think hydrogen is going to come quickly. And if you think about your Amazons, your DHLs, your FedEx, they all tend to come from a hub, leave for the day, and come back to the hub, right? So the hydrogen station can be right on that. That's very elegant, and I think that situation is it's meaningful, very meaningful. Hydrogen for the passenger cars, that's going to be trickier. There's every company's working on it. Ourselves, Toyota, um, many others. Honda's got a lot of work on that. So
What are
that's
what are the challenges? What
elegant.
are the challenges with passenger cars?
Creating the hydrogen and storing it on board. It needs very high pressure, extremely high pressure, and very strong tanks that take a lot of space. Packaging, but getting it compressed safely. So the last thing you want to do is have a cataclysmic, accident with a hydrogen. That much hydrogen on board would make for quite a mushroom cloud. Um, so yeah, that's something we want to be careful of. But the system itself works very well. It creates only water. It's super good. It takes a lot of energy to create hydrogen as well. So it has to be near a sustainable source. And then transporting the hydrogen is more difficult than transporting fuels. So we're looking at electrification as relatively elegant. The challenge with electrification is taking care of the battery from its creation and to its end of life. Making sure it's properly disposed of or recycled, not just creating another problem, right?
I are there is there anything else that you guys are looking at in terms of powertrains?
Um,
Like
for now, those are the
is solar
yeah.
like a no go?
Yeah, there's just not enough power density there. It's good for, let's say, conditioning the vehicle, to cool it, pre-cool it, to give a little less waste of energy when the car's starting off. To cool a hot cabin takes a lot of energy. So if you had a solar system to cool it or keep it cooled, so you don't have to waste that initial starting energy. But for driving a car is no way. It's you need an array that would be meters by meters by meters to create enough power for a vehicle. The students love to do it. Every time I have a student project, they always have solar panels,
On the roof.
but yeah, it's not so easy.
Ralph, what does your average day look like currently?
Well, on Mondays it's a lot of Zoom calls because we have meetings with our friends in France that start at 2 a.m. But in the middle of the week, I go to, like, right after this meeting here, I'll go into the studios, and I typically will walk around. I love walking around casually and checking on all the different studios. The studios are kind of by brand, and then we have our interior studios, and just looking at the clay, talking to the people. We're more or less 60% back in the office now. So there's a lot of activity, especially we have a series of electric cars. We're working on 7 brand new, completely brand new vehicles right now as we speak. Actually, they're coming out in a few years. They're all being born together because they're on the same platform. We want to make sure that they share things that people won't notice, but also are highly differentiated. So it's very exciting right now. And then the other meetings are the good old-fashioned fights with engineering. So we have a lot of these meetings about this component, that component, and trade-offs, and uh,
Fun.
but I love it. It's fun.
But
It's a lot
you
of fun.
still heavily involved in the in design reviews and deciding what things are going to look like.
Every day. So I have a private meeting with every one of my brand heads. Even my team, the Maserati team in Europe, has regular meetings with me all the time, and I'll pick the sketches. I still pick the sketches. They tend to narrow them down for me, but sometimes I want to see the entire wall of ideas, because I may see a tiny little sketch that may not mean something to someone else, but I'm excited by that. So I'd love to compete. And then we go into scale models. We'll look at sometimes up to 6, 7 scale models, and then narrow it down 2 or 3 full size and go from there. And then I bring the CO in. I bring CO in initially and the brands together to see the basic themes, then the finalists, and then we agree on the final one, and that's it. And then the rest is up to me to execute.
Are you guys doing a lot of? Are you guys doing any like remote reviews in VR, for example?
Tons, yeah. We started. We had something called Gravity Sketch. We invested in, bought a bunch of ocular glasses. They've been getting more manageable. They used to be very bulky with lots of cables, and we're finally now portable ones. So we just bought 27 of them for our designers to have in their homes, and they can actually take them home and design there and actually have reviews together. I don't need to jump in that often because they can show it to me on a big screen. but they actually can design a car together. So you can have up to 7 or 10 people pushing and pulling on one form and arguing about it inside this virtual room. It's so exciting. I'm so jealous
On
of
the
these
sub
young designers.
on the subject of arguing, you mentioned you had a comment in the series saying, "Yeah, when I would grow up, I want to be a yes man." Can you can you
That's fun.
can you elaborate a little bit on how you handle that? Because obviously in the moment you're going like, I don't necessarily want everybody just to go yes, but like how
Yeah.
do you handle challenge?
I embrace it. I like it. Sometimes you look sideways, especially when it comes from a lot of our sales guys. Like the brand heads tend to think in the moment. They tend to think the challenges, month to month challenge that they have. So they look at a product based on what they know in the moment, right? So we try to imagine 3 years from now when the car's out and it has to last 6 more years. So trying to pull them away and get them to think more creatively is the biggest challenge. But they trust us. They have a lot of faith in our office. They know they've been proven wrong many times. Something they didn't think people would like turns out to be successful. So it's a short argument typically, but what I like to do is involve them early on. So we bring in the business people, the finance people in all the time and show them the early stages. So we condition them to accept it and get used to seeing it, and they love it. Actually, they realize they're out of their depth sometimes, but they love the fact that we trust them to come see it.
And you talking about like marketing people as well, right?
Yeah, marketing, brand heads, even in some cases the engineers of course come all the time, but the finance people even. I've had the head of finance and our own group CFO come through the studios. Yeah.
And how do you take challenge from your own team, like as being an
Oh,
expert?
I respect them. They really, because they're in the day to day, so they're dealing with they all sit in the brand's meetings. So the one thing I require from my brand leaders, so my Dodge guys, Jeep guys, they sit on the staff meetings of the brand heads, virtually or in person. So they know all the battles. They really have an intrinsic knowledge. So I have to defer to them in the end, right? Because they really do know. And they constantly educate me on here's what the Jeep brand wants to achieve in South America, in Europe, whatever. So that's very invaluable to me. So they are my antenna to what's going on. So I have to respect what they ask of me or tell me.
But you will pull rank if you need to.
Yeah, of course. At the end of the day, there's always, but even themselves, they'll be like, I like both of these. So that, Ralph, which one do you think we should do? So I have to make the call at the end of the day. And I love that. I love the fact that, or me and the brand will agree or disagree. Sometimes the brand head is insisting on one theme or the other, and I feel it should be the other one. So we'll take elements from one theme and put it on and come with a compromise solution.
Ralph, you've been quite open about your hobbies and your passion for motorsports in general. What is your stance on people not being petrol heads as designers?
It's okay. That's fine. We have plenty that don't, that really aren't into cars at all. They have to. In Michigan, it's a little tougher, right? Because you can't not own a car and get to work. Sometimes a little tougher. But in Europe, I know we have people that bike to work, and that's okay. You don't have to be a petrol head at all, or a car could be a device for you. Those people tend, however, to be our interior designers. It's rare that we find people that gravitate to exterior design that don't love cars. It's very unusual, but we have a lot of people in our color and materials team, in our UX team, interior design team. There are actually product designers. They could just as soon design toys or medical equipment or whatever.
Are there any people in Michigan that are not petrol heads?
Many, a lot, more than you would think. Michigan
Really?
is oh yeah, Michigan is actually one of the head of marketing. They market all kinds of big art marketing firms here. There's a great medical community here. Yeah, there's a lot of other things. Architecture here and heavy industry, tool making. Yeah, we have an amazing automotive scene here, but you'd be surprised. It's not only that. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about what it's like to live in Detroit today? Because I've got such I'm a big music fan. There's obviously like, Detroit Rock City. There's a big hip hop scene there as well. There's obviously the strong automotive scene, but there's also,
Yep.
I know it's a tough town and it's been through a
Yeah.
lot in the past. And I just wondered what it was like to live there today.
It's changed a lot, and I live in pretty far away from the city center, but we go all the time. We go at least twice to three times a month. We go downtown and have dinner. It has completely changed in the last 5 to 6 years. A lot of investment. There's been some great big investors that have really rejuvenated the city. What they did is they rejuvenated older buildings and almost allowed vendors to come in at almost no rent for 5 years, which has created business inflows. Kids are moving to the city in droves to get apartments there. So the population of cities exploded, and it's cleaner, it's gentrified in some ways, still has its character because all the new stuff is in respect of the old stuff. So in most ways, they've actually reconditioned older designs. They have beautiful mid-century modern design, Art Deco styling that's kind of cleaned up and rejuvenated. So the city's alive. It's actually exciting. Some of the best restaurants are sprouting everywhere because a lot of young people that used to live here went away to live in Europe or in Japan in some cases, and later in their lives they've come back to take those skills back to Detroit and open a restaurant. So that's happening. I always ask when I go to a new restaurant, I want to talk to the owner or the chef, and that story seems to repeat itself all the time. Yeah, I was away for 20 years. I came back and I thought I would start my own new sushi place here or whatever, and it is to our benefit. Let's put it that way.
Have you ever thought about doing something completely different from car design?
Yes, one of my dreams is number one being an automotive journalist. I would love to be a host of something like Top Gear.
Really? Yeah, that would be
Uh,
pretty cool. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, a little bit of I like restoration. I'd love to restore cars on the side, and teaching. I've been offered some opportunities to be presidents of universities. I'm not quite ready for that yet, but that would be very interesting to head up a design school.
Is that something you could do in addition to your day to day, or would that take up everything?
I think Ralph of 10 years ago said, "Yeah, let's go for it." But today I would say no. It would be a little too much because I really want to focus on these future cars that I'm working on right now. But maybe 5 6 years from now, why not?
So what, Ralph? What is in the stable? What cars do you have in the garage?
Well, I have a Lancia Delta Integrale Evo 1. I've
Jesus.
got a 68 Alfa Romeo GTA replica that I finished, and a 74 Alfa Romeo. That's all Alphaholics. It's an Alphaholics catalog car. I've got a Race Viper, a couple of Porsches. We'll talk about which ones, but an older 930 turbo that I'm actually converting to
Oh
electric, which
wow.
is to some people that would be a crime to some, but I'm fascinated by this movement. A 68 Charger, a Radical race car I have, which I race, and a Giulia QV. And my favorite car right now, my most recent purchase, is a 1988 205 GTI, which
Really?
I've restored. Yeah, I love that car. I've always loved that car.
Wow.
So, and I drove it all summer, and I have modernized it so it runs a lot cleaner than it ever has. I've put modern day emissions controls on it. It has catalytic converter. It's fully electronic now, and I drive it every day. Gets 30 miles per gallon, and I go to commute to work in it.
So that's your daily driver.
Yeah, 205. Yeah, not in the winter. I mean, winter comes, I'll switch to my Grand Cherokee,
Of
but I
course
love
you.
cars, and they're not. I don't care for big supercars. I'm more into the quirky, weird stuff.
That's amazing. I know we've probably got to wrap up, but I need to just ask you about the 911 because I'm a big 911 fan. I know that you said that you saw that car when you were first 8 or 9 years old, and you were like, "What the hell? Why is that thing so much better looking than everything else?" What is your stance on that today? Are you still in love with it?
Yeah, I think it's every designer I know, just about every designer I know has a certain sweet spot for the 911. And it's funny that you mentioned that because the Netflix series I mentioned, the silver, and they showed a picture of that 930. I actually bought that very car. A friend of
No.
mine, a friend of mine had one. I've been bothering him for 10 years to buy it from him, and he wouldn't. He finally is kind of cleaning his fleet, and he's reserved it for me, so I bought it from him. The problem is I drove it and I hated it because it was the turbo lag was insane. It was stinky and smelly. So I talked to a friend of mine who's going to extract the motor, set it aside. We can actually put it back if we need to, and he's going to convert it to electric. It'll have a Tesla powertrain in it. So it'll do not to 60 in 1.9 seconds, but it'll look vintage. But I love the lines. I love just how violent it is, how much the fenders swell out, and its iconic face. And they've done a nice job evolving it to this day. I think they're running out of ideas a little bit. but it's still an attractive, iconic vehicle that it's one of those things you know what it is and you respect for what it can do.
Don't you think that car should just now be put to rest as we move into because I mean, I know that's a discussion all in itself, but the thing is, it's kind of like, I mean, they're going into full electrification now, and the Taycan, for example, is a beautiful car, but it's its own beast, and it kind of is like, carrying the mantle. It's got the same bloodline, it's got the same character, the construction of the fenders and everything, but it's done in a contemporary way. I wonder if the 911 should just be left with.
It's funny we're talking about Porsche because I have a lot of respect for Porsche, and I would love to sit in their boardrooms and hear this discussion. And you could see what they've done, which is clever. They've protected 911 as an icon, but they've evolved. They've not stood still, right? The Taycan, we've had one at work as a test vehicle. It's amazing. It's everything a Porsche should be. The Panamera, the GT4, the Caymans, the Cayennes, they've really expanded the Macans. I mean, amazing range of vehicles, but the 911 they've preserved. So I think the 911 is a bit like our Wrangler. You could look at a Wrangler and say, who needs a Wrangler? But the 911 is one of the best-selling sports cars to this day still. And the Wrangler is one of the best-selling Jeeps ever. It's incredible. To this day, we're still setting records. So there's something about it that people love. And until the public says no mas, I think our job is to find a way to present it to them in a way that makes sense. At the same time, innovating. So I think Porsche is doing exactly what they should be doing with 911.
Very good. Ralph, I'm going to let you go. I can't thank you enough for this. I'm sorry I'm a little bit all over the place, but I just had a million things to ask you, and I'm conscious of your time, and I'm a big fan. And I know people are going to do their nut when they see this, so I can't thank you enough.
Sam, this is one of the most fun interviews I've ever
done. Thank you. All right.
Take care.
Take care, Ralph. Cheers. Thank you.